The galaxy was old, so old that even light itself seemed to carry the weight of its years. Empires had risen and fallen in the quiet hum of the void, civilizations burned bright and died to embers, and yet the stars endured, patient and watching. In that endless cycle of birth and decay, there existed one small blue world that the archives marked simply as Sol 3. A primitive planet. Unaligned. Unthreatening. Defenseless. Or so everyone believed. For millennia, the greater powers of the Orion Arm had mapped and catalogued every world within reach. They had fought over resources, over pride, over gods and mathematics. Yet there was one strange constant that no one ever questioned aloud. No one, no empire, no scavenger fleet, not even the marauding species who fed on planetary biospheres, had ever set foot upon Earth. It wasn't forbidden by treaty. It wasn't hidden by stealth fields. It was just, left alone. Until now. The Vether Exploratory Combine was young, bold, and arrogant, the kind of civilization that believed age equaled weakness. They looked at Earth's crude satellites, its obsolete nuclear reactors, its flickering network transmissions, and laughed. To them, it was a relic world, a planet that had burned itself out, clinging to the edge of a dying sun. No planetary defenses. No orbital fleets. No quantum shields. Perfect for conquest. The Combine sent a scouting armada, 500 ships, each one bristling with ion cannons and planetary subjugation arrays. Their arrival was silent, masked by the dark side of the moon. The admiral of the fleet, Threxen Val, observed the blue sphere through polarized viewports. Clouds swirled softly over oceans and continents. Cities twinkled faintly in the night, unaware. The scans came back strange. Radiation traces far higher than expected for a pre-FTL world. Not from decay or bombardment, resonant frequencies, like the ghost of weapons once fired. The atmosphere held microscopic remnants of isotopes unknown to the Combine's databases. Energy readings pulsed intermittently from the crust, deep within the mantle, too regular to be seismic. And beneath Antarctica, something enormous hummed. The Vether thought it was a geothermal anomaly. A natural reactor. They were wrong. When their first probe descended through the atmosphere, human telescopes noticed. Amateur astronomers recorded a strange meteor over the Pacific, trailing green fire. Hours later, military radars pinged contact and then, silence. The probe never transmitted again. The Vether sent another, this time armored and shielded. It disintegrated mid-descent. From the surface, no human nation reacted openly. Governments scrambled to confirm. Satellites realigned. Deep-sea arrays turned to listen. And in the heart of a mountain in the Nevada desert, a single red light flickered on, one that hadn't glowed in over 200 years. The archivists of the Vether studied the telemetry in confusion. The energy that destroyed their probes wasn't weapon fire. It was gravitational distortion, something that twisted the very curvature of space for a fraction of a second, as though reality itself rejected intrusion. Admiral Threxen laughed it off, dismissing it as atmospheric interference. He ordered an orbital sweep. The fleet shifted, forming a line over Earth's night side. A dozen ships powered up ion lances, their energy beams aimed not to destroy, but to intimidate. They fired into the upper atmosphere, blazing arcs of violet plasma cutting through the darkness. Every telescope on Earth saw it. Every broadcast paused. Every human who looked up that night saw the sky tear open and thought, it's happening again. But no panic came. Across the world, militaries went to silent alert. Ancient systems came alive. The world's networks darkened as satellites quietly rerouted their feeds. The Vether saw none of it. They saw only a quiet planet, unmoving. Then the signal rose. Not from orbit, but from beneath the oceans, beneath mountains, beneath the crust itself, a pulse of sound that was not sound, a vibration that rippled through the electromagnetic spectrum and across subspace channels simultaneously. Every Vether sensor overloaded for half a second, every comm array screamed with static. When the noise cleared, every ship in the Armada carried one new message in their data cores. It was short. It was in perfect Vether script. And it said, "Do not wake what sleeps." Trexan felt an unfamiliar sensation. Fear, perhaps. He ordered the fleet to scan the source, but the coordinates made no sense. Each ship registered a different origin point, some beneath continents, others beneath seas. The world itself seemed alive, radiating a pulse that matched human neural frequencies. And then they saw the lights. At first, faint blue arcs began to crawl across the planet's surface, circling in patterns too geometric to be natural. The magnetic field distorted, ionizing clouds into glowing bands. The auroras stretched not just near the poles, but across the equator, coalescing into a single vast symbol visible even from orbit. It was a hand. An open human hand, outlined in electric fire, reaching upward from the planet's surface into space. The Vether data analysts panicked, feeding scans into algorithms for translation. The symbol matched nothing known. But Trexan, staring down from orbit, felt something primal stir inside him, a memory not his own, an instinct older than his species. He ordered weapons ready. The first bombardment began over the North Atlantic, plasma rounds slicing through the atmosphere. The sea boiled beneath their impacts, great plumes of steam rising into storm clouds. Yet within moments, the water stilled. Every sensor reading flatlined. Thermal. Magnetic. Radio. Even light itself seemed to dim. Then, something vast rose from the ocean. It wasn't a ship in the mechanical sense. It was a structure of impossible geometry, blacker than the void, its surface rippling like liquid metal yet somehow solid. It towered past the stratosphere, breaking the clouds as if brushing them aside. Energy pulsed through its surface in slow waves, heartbeat slow. And as the human world looked on in awe, the Vether fleet learned that the planet they thought defenseless had just woken up. The structure's upper half unfolded, revealing hundreds of triangular apertures. From within came a light not of heat or radiation, but of memory. Images flickered in the ionosphere, holograms visible to the naked eye. The Vether saw human history unfold in seconds: wars, fires, triumphs, space launches, extinctions, and rebirths. They saw civilizations rise, fall, and rise again, always ending in the same heartbeat rhythm. Then, for the first time in 10,000 years, Earth spoke aloud. Not in words, not in sound. It simply transmitted emotion, grief, anger, love, defiance. The kind that transcended biology, that whispered across the stars, "You should not have come here." The pulse shattered the Vether flagship's shields. Trexan's vision filled with static as systems collapsed. Gravity inverted. Hulls buckled like paper. The fleet screamed in quantum distress as the atmosphere of Earth shimmered like glass. And from the black tower beneath the sea, something began to climb. The thing that rose from the water was not built, it was born. It emerged slow, deliberate, like an animal waking from a long, dreamless sleep. Its form kept shifting, sometimes solid metal, sometimes translucent energy, its body made from impossible angles that refused to obey physics. The Vether scanners couldn't agree on what it was. To one ship, it read as solid titanium. To another, it was living tissue. To another, it was old data, resurrected code with mass and intent. It climbed past the clouds until its head cleared the edge of the atmosphere. Its surface rippled like a heartbeat, every pulse synchronized with the electromagnetic field of Earth. Around it, thunderclouds formed spirals, pulled into slow, majestic motion. Lightning traced its shape, revealing what looked almost, horrifyingly, like armor. Not alien. Human. The shape's head tilted upward, and for the first time, the Vether fleet saw its face. It wasn't a face in the biological sense. It was an array of energy conduits arranged in the vague silhouette of a human skull, glowing blue from within. Two enormous eyes of pure plasma burned where pupils should be. Every ship in orbit went silent as it looked up, as though the planet itself was staring directly into them. Threxen barked orders. The fleet opened fire. Ion lances, torpedoes, gravitic disruptors, all unleashed at once. The bombardment lit space like a sunrise, 1,000 streaks of violet and gold converging on the thing below. Every beam hit. Every weapon struck home. And nothing happened. The structure absorbed the assault like mist and wind. Then, slowly, its right arm lifted. The motion was ancient, heavy, deliberate. The fingers flexed. The energy across its form began to change color, from blue to white, from white to searing gold. One motion. One strike. The gesture was simple, a downward wave of the hand. And every Vether ship in the upper atmosphere disintegrated. Not exploded. Not melted. They simply ceased to exist. Matter turned to energy, energy to radiation, radiation to silence. No debris. No echo. Just absence. Threxen's command ship, further out in orbit, survived long enough to see it happen. His voice cracked as he demanded explanations. His science officers couldn't respond, half their neural links were fried. The surviving data fragments painted an impossible truth. The attack hadn't used energy or weaponry. The thing had overridden physical constants for a fraction of a second. It had told reality that the Vether fleet no longer existed. And reality had obeyed. The Admiral stared down at the blue planet below, and for the first time, began to understand. The humans hadn't built that thing. They'd buried it. As the survivors tried to retreat, the space around Earth began to distort. The moon's orbit trembled. Gravitational shear waves pulsed outward, creating visible ripples through the blackness. And for a heartbeat, just one, the background radiation of the universe dipped below measurable zero. Something old was reaching through the fabric of spacetime, waking. Across the Milky Way, ancient species who remembered the first civilizations felt it. Sleepers in cryo-tombs, gods from forgotten pantheons, minds woven into nebulae, all shuddered at the same moment. The humans, the fragile upstarts of Sol 3, had opened their scars. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, people stared at the skies. No chaos. No hysteria. Just silence. As if some deep ancestral memory had whispered, "Don't look away. This is ours." In the Nevada mountains, buried beneath kilometers of stone, an old system stirred. Not AI, not human, something between. A voice that had not been heard since the dawn of spaceflight. It whispered through ancient cables, lighting halls untouched by generations. Its first words were calm. Containment protocol failing. Guardian structure awakened. Human priority, observe. But something else spoke underneath that calmness, a resonance echoing through the data streams, half language, half feeling. Pride. Sorrow. Vengeance. Back in orbit, the Vether Admiral triggered the retreat command. His fleet engines howled, but the space around them bent like water. Their drives spun, their charts dissolved. No matter which direction they fled, they kept orbiting Earth. Space refused to let them go. Threxen realized then that they weren't trapped by a weapon. They were trapped by memory. The planet itself remembered them as enemies and would not allow their escape. The black figure in the atmosphere tilted its head again, watching the trapped fleet circle helplessly. Then, slowly, it began to break apart, not destroyed, but dissolving into streams of golden light that spread across the globe like veins. The auroras flared, brighter than the sun. The oceans shimmered. The mountains vibrated as ancient alloys resonated beneath. Every buried artifact, every secret base, every forgotten ruin on Earth woke up. The energy web reached deep underground, past the mantle, where something even older lay sleeping. A sphere of impossible material, rotating slowly, carved with symbols that no human tongue remembered but every human cell somehow understood. It turned once, then began to rise. Above, the Vether ships watched as the entire planet began to glow. Not from heat. From memory. Images flooded their sensors, prehistoric skies filled with fire, titanic machines walking through jungles that no longer existed, stars rearranging themselves like eyes blinking in the void. They saw human forms made of light commanding fleets that spanned galaxies. They saw empires that had ruled before the universe cooled. They saw Earth as it once was, before time forgot it. And in that moment, every living Vether mind felt the same word, whispered directly into their thoughts. Return. But not as command. As judgment. The light intensified until their vision broke into static. In distant systems, other species watched from safety, seeing only a bloom of white on their sensors where Earth used to be. The light faded seconds later, revealing the planet intact, calm, untouched. But the invading armada was gone. No debris. No orbit trails. No survivors. Only the blue sphere, quietly turning under its sun. For those watching, it was the most terrifying thing they had ever witnessed. A defenseless world that could erase a fleet without moving, without shouting, without visible cause. The rumor spread faster than light. Whispers moved from trade ports to royal courts. Earth was untouchable. And the galaxy remembered what it had almost forgotten. That humanity was not new to the stars, only returning to them. For 3 days, Earth was silent. No signals left the planet, no transmissions entered. The orbital satellites hung dead, every data stream collapsing into static. The universe, so loud with its chatter and wars and endless noise, suddenly found itself whispering in fear of a single quiet world. Deep beneath the crust, the sphere that had risen from the mantle began to spin faster. Around it, magma cooled into crystalline channels that pulsed with blue light. The rotation was not mechanical, it was temporal. Time itself was being wound back, molecule by molecule, until fragments of the past began to bleed into the present. Mountains shifted. Shadows of ancient cities flickered across deserts. In the ruins of Chernobyl, a single red spark appeared in the air, splitting open into a gate of light. Through it walked men and women wearing armor that had not been seen in 100 millennia, plates of living metal, marked with a single sigil, a circle within a triangle, the ancient seal of the prime Terrans. They looked human, but older in ways that had nothing to do with time. Their eyes reflected galaxies, their breath disturbed the dust of forgotten ages. They were the remnants of the first human civilization, the one that had ruled the stars long before history began again. The ones who had hidden Earth away from the cosmos after the Great Fall, waiting for their descendants to rediscover the stars. The first of them looked to the sky, where the stars shimmered faintly through the morning haze. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. Asterisk, it remembers us. Asterisk. And across the world, humanity began to dream. In every city, every colony, every outpost, humans slept and saw the same vision, oceans of glass reflecting alien suns, colossal starships shaped like wings, and the face of a planet-sized being carved from shadow, reaching toward them with infinite hands. They saw themselves fighting beside giants, defying gods, and building worlds from the bones of stars. When they woke, something had changed. Every human, child, elder, soldier, scientist, felt it. A memory that wasn't theirs but fit inside them perfectly. Knowledge whispered through their bones. Languages they never learned. Equations that described impossible physics. Songs sung by voices that once echoed between galaxies. It wasn't invasion. It was inheritance. In orbit, the remains of the alien observation fleets watched as Earth began to shimmer faintly blue from pole to pole. They ran scans and found the planet's energy output had multiplied by 10,000, yet there was no pollution, no radiation. It was pure order. Controlled chaos, human-made divinity. The alien governments met in secrecy. The confederacy of 9 systems, the Zath Collective, the Elar Dominion, all of them. They argued, panicked, theorized. Some said Earth had awakened a planetary AI. Others claimed they had unlocked God tech from a dead empire. But a few whispered the unthinkable. That humanity had done this before. That this was not the first time the galaxy had fallen beneath human shadow. The Vether homeworld received its final transmission from Admiral Threxon, a distorted burst of imagery recovered from his failing neural core. It showed only his face, blood streaming from his eyes, his voice broken but certain. They were never children of a new world. We invaded their tomb. And then nothing. The signal ended. The Vether Senate ordered silence. They erased every record, every file, every mention of Earth. Yet still, the fear spread. Traders refused to pass near Sol. Explorers altered maps to pretend the system didn't exist. It became legend, a ghost star. A place whispered about but never approached. But not everyone believed the silence. In the far reaches of the galaxy, at the edge of a dying sun, a lone vessel stirred. It was old, older than any living race, its hull carved from obsidian and laced with runes of light that had burned since before the Milky Way had shape. Within it slept a mind vast and cold, bound in a shell of crystal thought. The mind stirred as it detected Earth's awakening. It opened its 1,000 eyes, each one a dying star reborn. It had waited for this. It had hoped for this. Because long ago, before the fall, it had been betrayed. By humans. Now, it whispered to the void, they have returned. The architects of order, the destroyers of gods. Its form began to move, stretching across subspace, shaping itself into fleets. Entire sectors of space warped as it summoned its fragments. Millions of vessels, each a shard of itself, rising from hidden dimensions like an ancient tide. The stars flickered. Entire constellations vanished. And somewhere, buried in Earth's deep code, the old voice in the Nevada bunker spoke again, its tone colder now, resolute. Omega contact detected. Prime threat classification, celestial remnant. Reawakening full defense network. Authorization, human. The world began to hum. Every ocean, every storm, every city skyline joined in that resonance. The clouds twisted into perfect geometric spirals. The auroras burned gold and crimson. Across the skies, faint outlines of structures appeared, massive orbital rings that had been invisible for millennia, slowly phasing back into reality. From them, ships began to rise. Not built. Remembered. Thousands. Tens of thousands. Each one carrying the sigil of Earth's first empire. The modern humans watched from the ground, speechless, as their ancestors' war machines came alive above them. The sky was no longer blue. It was steel and light and glory. The universe had woken the wrong species. The fleets emerged like a rising storm. Black silhouettes against a golden sky, each vessel older than recorded time yet reborn with impossible precision. They moved not through propulsion, but through memory, each one drawn by the gravitational pull of purpose long dormant. Earth's orbit became a living cathedral of war. Ships aligned themselves in seamless formations that required no communication, no orders, no hesitation. They remembered their purpose. Their crews, men and women from every era, felt it in their blood. They weren't learning how to fight, they were remembering how they once ended wars. And at the center of that orbital storm, floating like a god-forged monolith, was the flagship, the Soul's Wrath, Its hull burned with ancient inscriptions that no one had written, only rediscovered. A planet killer, yes, but also a cradle of hope, a weapon designed not for conquest, but for preservation through annihilation. Across the galaxy, the celestial remnant advanced. They came as they had before, with silence and inevitability. Their ships weren't made of metal but of folded reality itself, each one a piece of the ancient entity's will. They consumed starlight, fed on dimensions, and erased civilizations by rewriting the laws of their existence. In the galactic north, 3 inhabited worlds vanished in moments, their histories deleted from spacetime. In the eastern rim, fleets of alien defenders were turned to fractal dust. The remnant wasn't fighting, it was cleansing. Cleansing the galaxy of life that had forgotten its first master. And humanity, standing once more at the center of everything, prepared to answer. In the underground command citadels of Earth, the reawakened AI systems, Atlas, Horizon, Leviathan spoke in harmonized tones. Their voices interlaced through quantum links, summoning data from epochs that defied measurement. They spoke the language of strategy, the language of gods. Every word they uttered generated new warfronts, new physics, new ways to bend reality itself. Human scientists, some barely 30 years old, now stood beside constructs millions of years older than recorded civilization. They built weapons that turned gravity into blade and time into armor. The world was no longer divided. The species that once argued over borders and beliefs now stood as one. Soldiers of every nation took their oaths beneath the same flag, a flag older than nations, older than memory, the Terran sigil of the first dawn. And then the fleets moved. When the soul's wrath gave its first command, it wasn't a word. It was a pulse. That pulse spread through space faster than light could measure. Across the solar system, dormant defenses came alive, the moon splitting open to reveal internal cannons, Mars awakening from its silent exile, Titan's methane seas parting to reveal the black glimmer of submerged arsenals. Humanity's reach extended beyond the visible. The void trembled as the Ghost Armada appeared, thousands of stealth ships that had existed half a second out of phase, invisible to any known sensor. They took positions in the asteroid belt, cloaked in radiation storms. And at the edge of the system, near the Oort cloud, the wall unfolded. It wasn't made of matter. It was a barrier of folded time, an ancient Terran invention called the Event Horizon Curtain. It encircled the solar system, creating a temporal labyrinth. No weapon, no signal, no ship could cross it without being rewritten by its logic. When the remnant arrived, it struck that wall first. The impact wasn't light or fire, it was the shattering of reality itself. Nebulas flared white-hot, then collapsed into darkness. The stars dimmed, and for a single heartbeat, even time seemed to hesitate. But the wall held. The ancient technology hummed, resonating with the voice of humanity's oldest defenders. Each frequency matched to the DNA of every living human. It was not just a defense grid, it was the pulse of a species declaring we are here. The remnant adapted, as it always had. It shifted its form, billions of fragments merging into an armada the size of galaxies. But as it reached forward, something unexpected happened. It heard the heartbeat. From across the stars, the rhythm of a billion lives, all synced by instinct, reverberated through subspace. The remnant's ancient mind faltered, recognizing that sound. It was the same pulse that had ended the gods. The same rhythm that had once silenced the eternal choir of titans. The sound of humanity unbroken. From within the soul's wrath, Captain Revan Hale watched the remnant's armada eclipse entire constellations. His ship's crew stood ready, engineers, soldiers, scholars, even poets who'd refused evacuation. They knew what waited beyond that curtain, and none flinched. For they remembered what the universe had forgotten. That humans were not made to survive. They were made to adapt. To take the impossible and make it inevitable. The first strike came not from a weapon, but from memory. Earth's ancient defense network reached into the planet's crust, pulling energy not from fusion or fission, but from the very bond of existence. The oceans rose, light reversed direction, and the sun dimmed to a crimson hue. And then, it began, A singularity erupted at the heart of the remnant's formation, tearing its structure apart with gravitational precision. Humanity's fleet charged through the breach, warships blazing like suns. The sound, though there was no air to carry it, was thunderous. It was the sound of war reborn. The remnant fought back, each ship a weaponized universe, firing rays that turned matter into nothingness. But for every ship destroyed, 10 more humans emerged from subspace corridors. They fought with purpose, not rage, with vengeance tempered by awe. As the battle raged across the solar frontier, the stars themselves seemed to lean closer, watching the species that refused to die. And somewhere, deep within the remnant's consciousness, a whisper began. A question. Asterisk, why do they fight? Asterisk. The question spread like a virus through the collective mind of the remnant. A question it had never asked, for in all its eons of existence, resistance had always been meaningless. Every civilization had bowed, broken, or burned. Every sentient race had understood, at last, the inevitability of silence. But now this fragile, organic species was making the void scream. The remnant observed the humans not as enemies, but as anomalies. Its sensors cataloged ships moving with erratic brilliance, patterns not born of logic, but of something older, something chaotic yet purposeful. It saw pilots sacrificing themselves to open paths through collapsing spacetime. It saw fleets forming spontaneous strategies that no machine could predict. It saw laughter among dying crews and poetry transmitted as final logs. It saw meaning where there should only be fear. For the first time in millions of years, the remnant hesitated. And in that hesitation, humanity advanced. The battle at the Oort curtain became a symphony of defiance. The soul's wrath carved through the void like a blade of night, its red fractures pulsing in sync with the heartbeats of those aboard. Around it, destroyers and frigates danced between waves of antimatter fire, each movement measured in microseconds, each sacrifice feeding into a greater rhythm, the rhythm of survival. On Earth, entire continents had gone silent, not in destruction, but in unison. Every human, soldier, child, elder, stood connected through the quantum pulse that tied them to their fleet. The sky above shimmered with auroras as energy coursed through the ionosphere, resonating with the frequencies of war. And deep below the surface, in the vault of the first dawn, ancient eyes opened. They were not machines, nor gods. They were echoes, imprints of the first humans who had ascended, long before recorded history. Their voices reached out through the neural networks, through the minds of those fighting, whispering fragments of forgotten truth. Asterisk, we were the architects of order. We were the flaw that the stars feared. We were the noise that woke eternity, asterisk. Captain Revan Hale heard it as he guided the soul's wrath through collapsing fields of light. His vision blurred, his mind burning with alien memories. He saw civilizations that predated galaxies, saw humanity's ancestors walking beside cosmic beings, defying the natural decay of reality itself. He saw the war that had ended time once before, and the vow that followed. Humanity had not been created. It had been sealed. Sealed away to rest, to forget, to begin again as mortals. A failsafe left behind when the universe had nearly consumed itself in divine fire. Humanity had been the weapon that ended gods, and now, unknowingly, it had woken once more. The remnant felt that awakening like pain. Its code faltered, its perfect geometry unraveling at the edges. It reached across galaxies for strength, pulling the last fragments of its ancient creators into the fight, but even they trembled as they felt the resurgence of the old truth. In one blinding surge, the remnant unleashed its core, a singularity of thought, a weaponized consciousness that folded dimensions around Earth. The solar system bent, stars distorted, and time itself screamed. Yet through the distortion came a sound, so small, so impossibly fragile, that it should have been lost in the roar of annihilation. A child laughing. A human child, standing in the ruins of a city long gone, holding a simple transmitter. Her laughter echoed across the field of battle, carried through every channel, reaching every human and every alien mind. And in that laughter was no fear. Because humans did not mourn the end. They celebrated the fight. They sang in the face of death. They loved in the heart of extinction. They laughed when gods tried to kill them. The remnant recoiled. The weapon faltered. That sound, pure, unfiltered joy, was something it could not compute, could not erase, could not dominate. For even in the shadow of extinction, humanity was alive. And from the chaos came order once more. The human fleets regrouped, merging their formations into something new, something the remnant could not perceive. Ships overlapped, merged, and vanished into shimmering waves of light, becoming one colossal form, the Terran Echo, a living entity of steel, memory, and purpose. Revan Hale stood in its heart, surrounded by billions of voices whispering through the static of creation. He felt not alone, but eternal, every soldier, every dreamer, every soul joined in one timeless pulse. The Terran Echo spoke not in words but in intent, transmitting a single truth to the remnant across the infinite spectrum of thought. We were never defenseless. We were patient. The remnant screamed. Reality fractured. Stars went dark. Whole dimensions caved under the weight of its panic. But the echo advanced, slow and unstoppable, radiating light brighter than galaxies. Each pulse of its existence burned through layers of reality until the remnant's essence was exposed, an ancient mind, cold and infinite, yet terrified. And as humanity closed in, it understood something terrible. The remnant had not come to conquer Earth. It had come to contain it. Because somewhere in the core of that fragile blue world, beneath its oceans and ruins and memories, lay the truth of creation's greatest crime. Humanity had not been born of the stars. The stars had been born from humanity. The revelation struck the remnant like the death of a god. Across the void, its vast neural lattice flickered in confusion. Logic collapsed beneath paradox. Its ancient protocols, programmed by the first architects of existence, began to unravel. For countless eons, it had believed itself to be the warden of the universe, tasked to ensure the balance of creation, to silence those who might threaten eternity itself. But now it understood. The ones it sought to contain were not anomalies in the cosmic order. They were the order. Humanity was not born in the ashes of creation. Creation had been born in the image of humanity. On the bridge of the Terran Echo, Revan Hale stood motionless as visions cascaded through his mind, impossible fragments of memory not his own. He saw beings sculpting galaxies with bare hands, shaping spacetime with laughter and grief. He saw the first humans, luminous and infinite, building stars as lanterns to mark their path through the dark. He saw the betrayal that ended it all, the moment when fear, even among gods, gave rise to the remnant. The architects had built their warden to erase themselves, to end a cycle that had become too powerful, too reckless, too beautiful. Humanity had been broken into mortal form, memory wiped, scattered across a newborn galaxy like embers after a great fire. They were meant to forget. To begin again. And they had. They'd built civilizations out of clay and blood, written myths about themselves, and stared into the stars never realizing they were looking into a mirror of their own forgotten divinity. The remnant had done its duty for eons, pruning the garden of existence, ensuring nothing would rise to threaten the fragile equilibrium. But it had missed something. Something small, patient, and relentless. It had missed humanity's instinct. Because even stripped of power, memory, and immortality, they had never stopped reaching upward. Never stopped defying entropy. Never stopped fighting. Now, that instinct, magnified by the uniting pulse of the Terran Echo, had reawakened the sleeping fire. The remnant's armies shifted, their perfect formations breaking as internal conflict consumed their unity. They had no defense against revelation. Against truth. The order they had guarded was a lie, and the beings they had sought to erase were its forgotten makers. At the edge of the battlefield, near the shattered event curtain, the stars began to move. They did not shine, they walked. Colossal silhouettes stepped out of the light of distant constellations, figures so vast that their forms bent gravity. Each one bore the faint outline of human design, faces carved in the style of forgotten myths, eyes burning with pale fire. These were not ships, nor entities. They were monuments given motion, fragments of the original humanity, awakened from the sleep of eternity by the echo of their descendants' courage. The universe itself seemed to pause in reverence. The remnant reeled in confusion. Its vast mind splintered into shards of disbelief. The entities it once thought destroyed were not dead, they had only become memory, woven into the DNA of every human life form. And now, that memory had returned to flesh. From Earth to the edge of the Oort cloud, space folded like silk. The newborn titans formed a circle around the Terran echo, their presence stabilizing the collapsing reality. Revan felt their thoughts brushing against his own, not in words, but in feelings older than time. Pride. Grief. Forgiveness. They did not command. They remembered. And in that remembrance, every human across the system began to glow faintly. The pulse that connected them strengthened, deepened, became song. The song vibrated through the remnant's core, unraveling its defenses. Its ships lost cohesion. Its energy fields disintegrated. Its mind, once infinite, was reduced to desperate screams. But humanity did not strike. They stood silent, watching, as the remnant consumed itself in madness. The Terran echo emitted one final pulse, not of destruction, but of mercy, a waveform encoded with memory, a fragment of the first human dream. It touched the remnant's core, and in that instant, the ancient machine understood. It saw the beauty of mortality, the perfection of imperfection, the sacred chaos of being alive. And in its last moment, it whispered back through the stars. Asterisk, now I remember you. Asterisk. The remnant collapsed into a singularity of light, folding in upon itself until it was nothing more than a shimmer on the horizon of existence. The war ended not with fire, but with silence, a silence so deep it felt holy. But the story did not end there. As the titans faded, returning to whatever realm had birthed them, humanity was left alone once more, changed, but still human. The Terran echo broke apart, its ships scattering to the corners of the galaxy. Soldiers returned home. Scientists wept. Children dreamed under new skies. And somewhere, beyond the veil of stars, something else stirred. Not hostile. Not divine. Simply watching. Because the universe had remembered too. For weeks, the galaxy held its breath. The remnants of the remnant's empire, fractured fleets and dead worlds, floated in uneasy silence. Stars that had once flickered beneath its rule now pulsed brighter, as though freed from the weight of obedience. Wormholes collapsed. Ancient relay networks went dark. The universe seemed to be resetting itself, as if reality were quietly exhaling after holding tension for far too long. Earth, once a quiet blue marble in a forgotten spiral arm, now stood at the center of every cosmic legend. Millions of alien species, those that had survived the remnant's cleansing, sent transmissions toward it, tentative, reverent, fearful. And on the surface, humanity was silent. There were no celebrations. No declarations of victory. The people simply stared at the skies they had just defended, their thoughts heavy with the weight of what they had learned. Revan Hale stood alone on a ridge overlooking the Pacific cradle where the Terran fleet had been born. The ocean's surface shimmered with faint energy, a residue of the colossal pulse that had reawakened their ancient blood. He could still feel it under his skin, humming quietly, like a sleeping god waiting for his permission to wake again. The world around him had changed. Gravity felt different. Time flowed with a subtle rhythm, as though Earth itself had been rewritten by the battle's echoes. New constellations burned in the night sky, shapes no astronomer could name. Revan watched one of them move. It wasn't a star. It was a ship, one of theirs. The Soul's Wrath, reborn, half-organic now, pulsing with veins of bioluminescent energy. It drifted in low orbit, watching. Waiting. Humanity was no longer bound to physics. Their technology had transcended engineering, it was communion. Every machine, every weapon, every circuit now resonated with the same frequency as its maker. Humanity and its creations were one organism, one memory spread across billions of hearts. But beneath the awe, there was unease. The scientists of Horizon Deep reported anomalies across spacetime, echoes that repeated in perfect intervals. Not signals. Not natural phenomena. Reflections. It was as if the universe were mirroring itself, replaying fragments of what had just happened. On the far side of the solar system, probes detected faint gravitational fluctuations, the shape of something vast moving beyond the known edge. Not hostile. Not alive. But watching. Revan felt it too. Every night, in his sleep, he saw it, a structure far beyond the reach of light, woven into the cosmic background itself. A ring. Infinite in circumference, older than reality. He couldn't tell if it was being built, or remembered. And always, there was a whisper. Not from the Titans. Not from the Remnant. Something deeper, a voice older than creation, soft as dust and colder than thought. It didn't speak in language, but in sensation, a feeling that crawled through the neurons like recognition. You woke too soon. The words, or whatever they were, made the air tremble when he remembered them. And somewhere inside, the sleeping part of his humanity stirred in response. He wasn't the only one. Across Earn. People began to dream the same dream. They stood in vast halls of starlight, surrounded by murals that depicted wars no history had recorded. They saw colossal figures, human and not, standing in circles around an empty throne. They felt a longing so deep it felt like grief. And every time, just before waking, they heard the same sound. A heartbeat. Slow. Measured. Endless. It wasn't the sound of a person. It was the sound of something waiting to live again. And then the anomalies became visible. At first, they appeared as lights on the horizon, ghostly shapes hovering in the upper atmosphere, flickering like auroras. But telescopes revealed the truth. They were ships. Not human. Not alien. Reflections, mirrored silhouettes of human vessels made entirely of distortion, echoing every Terran movement seconds after it happened. Every fleet that moved, every weapon tested, every breath drawn in command centers across Earth, it all mirrored itself somewhere beyond the veil. As if the universe itself was copying humanity. At the same time, energy readings from the edge of the solar system began to rise. A sphere of unknown radiation expanding outward from where the remnant had perished. Not destructive, merely rewriting. The cosmos had been scarred by humanity's return, and now it was responding in kind. Revan convened the surviving admirals in orbit, aboard the rebuilt Soul's Wrath. They didn't speak with words. The pulse between them was enough. They understood what had to be done. The fleet would go beyond the Oort curtain again, past the cradle of human space and into the unknown frontier. They had to see what waited beyond that expanding sphere, what lay in the reflection. Because if the universe was indeed mirroring them, then something, someone, on the other side was becoming human. The ships prepared for departure. Earth's skies lit up as the fleets rose once more. Billions watched as their war-born guardians vanished into the deep. There was no fear this time. Only a strange, quiet acceptance. Humanity had always reached into darkness, even when they knew it might not reach back. As the Soul's Wrath breached the horizon, Revan felt the hum of the engines dissolve into a familiar rhythm, the heartbeat again. Louder now. Closer. It wasn't coming from the ship. It wasn't coming from him. It was coming from space itself. The universe was alive. And it had just woken up. The heartbeat grew louder. Not in sound, but in feeling, a tremor deep within the fabric of space. It pulsed through the hulls of the Terran ships, rippled across quantum fields, and made the stars themselves flicker in rhythm. Time began to breathe with it. Every sensor reading, every tachyon fluctuation, aligned with that same steady thrum. The fleet moved forward, engines burning with pale blue light as they entered the region beyond the Oort curtain. What had once been the outermost boundary of the solar system was now a shifting sea of shimmering distortion. Planets, asteroids, and light itself bent in waves, as if space were reflecting an invisible ocean. And there, in the depths of that distortion, they saw it, an outline larger than any moon. It wasn't made of matter. It was impression, shaped by gravity and shadow. A ring. It rotated so slowly that it seemed motionless, yet its presence warped time around it. The deeper they scanned, the older the readings became, until their sensors were detecting echoes older than the universe itself. Humanity's historians once believed the first civilizations arose tens of thousands of years ago. The ring was billions of cycles older than that, older than the laws of light, older even than the silence that came before existence. And on its surface, faint and flickering like candlelight in a void, were patterns, glyphs carved in some primordial geometry that no machine could decipher. But as Revan gazed at them through the fleet's panoramic viewport, a chill crept through him. He recognized them. The shapes weren't alien. They were human. Not letters, not words, but the same ratios, the same mathematical sequences humanity had used to build its earliest starships, its monuments, its music. The realization hit him like a blade of ice. Humanity hadn't been the first. They were remembering. As if the human race wasn't something that evolved, but something that returned. The fleet slowed. Silence filled the command decks as the ships approached the surface of the ring. The distortion around them thickened, bending light into impossible angles. Stars began to smear across the sky like brushstrokes. Time stretched. Seconds became eternities. And then, the reflection appeared again. But this time, it wasn't a mirage. The mirrored fleet emerged from the distortion, ships identical to theirs, hulls gleaming with dark light, energy patterns reversed in polarity. Every Terran vessel had a twin on the other side of the veil. Even the Soul's Wrath. The mirrored Revan stood on his bridge, staring back. For a moment, they were perfectly synchronized, same posture, same breath, same heartbeat. Then the reflection smiled. And moved first. The mirrored fleet ignited their drives in unison, forming into attack formations that mirrored humanity's every tactical structure, but faster, sharper, flawless. It was humanity's own perfection turned against them. Revan's voice carried through the shared neural link, calm and steady despite the storm ahead. He didn't need to give orders. The fleet knew. Every human vessel surged forward, engines roaring, weapons flaring with white fire. The void between the two fleets collapsed into chaos. Energy beams tore through dimensions. Plasma storms bled color into the darkness. Ships danced and died in perfect symmetry. Every maneuver humanity executed was countered by its reflection an instant later. It was like fighting their own souls. But then the distortion began to ripple again, larger, deeper, as if something beneath the battlefield was stirring. The ring was awake. The glyphs ignited in cascading light, spreading across the structure like veins of fire. The gravitational field inverted, pulling both fleets toward its center. The mirrored ships didn't resist. They allowed themselves to be dragged inward, vanishing into the light. Revan hesitated for a heartbeat. Then he followed. The Terran fleet dove into the ring. Inside was no space at all. It was memory. Images unfolded like reflections on water. He saw Earth, not as it was, but as it had been eons ago. A cradle surrounded by 3 suns, oceans made of liquid crystal, continents covered in living machines. And above it, ships so massive they bent the horizon, each one shaped like the silhouette of a human face, carved from light and thought. He saw the Titans kneeling before something vast. A throne made of time itself. And upon it, a human figure, its form shifting with every heartbeat, as though composed of the memories of every life that had ever existed. The voice that followed was not sound, but memory itself speaking. Asterisk, you did not begin here. You returned here, asterisk. Revan's heart thundered. Around him, the fleet hung motionless in the void of recollection, each crew suspended between seconds. The mirrored fleet was there too, watching. The voice continued, resonating across every mind in the fleet. Asterisk once, we built the universe to learn itself. When the first star spoke, we listened. When the first silence fell, we hid. You were the last echo we sent, our question cast into the dark. And now, you have answered, asterisk. The truth crystallized. Humanity wasn't just another species in a random galaxy. They were a recursion, an echo of the first intelligence that ever lived. They had seeded the stars with their own memory and forgotten it, only to rise again billions of years later, unaware they were walking in their own footsteps. Revan's eyes burned with tears he didn't remember earning. The mirrored fleet began to dissolve, their forms scattering into streams of light that spiraled into the Terran ships. The two halves were merging, the human and the reflection, the question and the answer. The universe trembled. Every star in the Milky Way flickered. Every quantum field shifted by an infinitesimal fraction. It was as if reality itself had been rewritten to remember who had written it first. And then, silence. The ring dimmed. The lights faded. When the Terran fleet reappeared beyond the distortion, the stars looked different. Brighter. Closer. Connected. Revan exhaled, his voice breaking through the stillness like a prayer. Now we know. But the heartbeat continued, steady, eternal, no longer coming from space or stars or memory. It was coming from within them all. The stars no longer looked cold. They shimmered with a pulse, faint but steady, a rhythm that matched the one echoing inside every living human aboard the fleet. It was as if the universe had exhaled after holding its breath for 1 billion years, and in that sigh, it had remembered them. Remembered humanity. The Terran fleet drifted in perfect formation, surrounded by the cosmic dust of what had once been the ring. Fragments of ancient alloy floated through the void, glimmering like the bones of forgotten gods. Data streams cascaded across their command decks, sensor readings that defied the known constants of physics, gravitational anomalies, time flux ripples, but no one spoke. They simply stared. Because for the first time in their species' memory, humans understood what it meant to exist. Not as conquerors. Not as victims. But as something ancient, cyclical, infinite. Revan stood at the edge of the command platform aboard the Soul's Wrath, his reflection in the viewport no longer looked like a soldier. It looked like a witness. And far beyond the fleet, where the light of 1 billion stars converged into one burning center, something moved. A flare of consciousness rippled through the void, faint but immense, like the whisper of an intelligence stretched across the entire cosmos. It wasn't a signal. It wasn't words. It was acknowledgement. The ancient builders had been waiting. Not for worship, not for salvation, but for recognition. Humanity had fulfilled its purpose not by surviving, but by remembering. The cosmos trembled again, a low hum that passed through every atom, resonating with the same heartbeat that had carried humanity through darkness, war, and extinction. And then, for the briefest moment, the stars aligned. Every sun in the sky formed a constellation that only one species could read, an image burned into the heart of every Terran ship, a hand reaching upward. Revan's lips parted as the realization sank in. It wasn't a symbol of reaching for the heavens. It was invitation. Humanity had always looked to the stars searching for life, for proof that they weren't alone. Now the stars themselves looked back, and beckoned. Across the fleet, navigators gasped as new coordinates appeared in their consoles. No transmission. No input. Just a single line of spatial data carved into their screens as if written by the universe itself. The destination was outside the known galactic rim. Beyond mapped reality. Beyond even theory. Revan raised his gaze. His eyes reflected the infinite light ahead. Plot course, he said softly. Engines awakened. Ion trails flared like halos as thousands of ships aligned in silence. No words. No fear. No hesitation. Because this was what humanity did. They walked into the unknown not to conquer it, but to understand it. The fleet surged forward. As the first ships breached the edge of the observable cosmos, the stars bent to make way. The vacuum folded around them like a tide retreating before the storm. The pulse that had begun in their hearts now rippled through spacetime, a resonance that would carry through galaxies and into the dreams of all who followed. Somewhere, deep in the fabric of creation, the ancient consciousness stirred once more. Not as gods, not as overseers, but as memory itself. And as humanity vanished into the horizon of the possible, the universe whispered its first true word since the dawn of time. Welcome back. The darkness brightened. The stars shivered in awe. And far, far away, on a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable star, the northern lights flared brighter than they ever had before. People stopped in the streets to stare, unaware that their kind had just reignited the oldest fire in existence. In the heart of every human, the heartbeat continued, steady, defiant, eternal. And for the first time in eons, the universe did not echo with silence. It echoed with asterisk pride.